Alright, in this video I'm going to talk about adding and subtracting polynomials. And remember, a polynomial is basically you have x's or some variable to positive whole numbers. You can have any number you want out front of the variables, again as long as you have positive and negative whole numbers. And then you can also just have regular numbers floating around there as well. There doesn't have to be a variable attached to them. So x squared plus square root of 2, x to the 8th plus 4, that would be an example of a polynomial. So in this first example here, I've got two polynomials that I want to add. Notice they're in parentheses, so remember we can think about there being a positive 1 out front of those. And we have to distribute the positive 1 to each term on both parts to get rid of the parentheses. So I'll simply have a 1x squared plus 4x plus 5, and then plus 6x plus 3. And this is where we now have to combine our like terms. So I see an x squared term, but I don't see any other x squared terms in there. So that means there's only a single x squared term. Now I look at things that have an x attached to them. So I see a 4x term and I see a 6x term. And what you do is you simply do the arithmetic with the numbers out front of those. So positive 4 and positive 6 is positive 10, and then we just attach our x. And then we've got a positive 5 and a positive 3 left over, which will give us simply positive 8. Okay, in our next example here, same idea, but now we have some numbers besides 1 that we need to distribute out. So on my first term, I'll get 2 times x to the 4th, which is just 2x to the 4th. And then again, you basically do the arithmetic with the numbers out front and just kind of stick the variable on. So 2 times 5 is positive 10, and then I stick my x on. And now I do the same thing on the other, again recognizing now that the thing that gets distributed is the negative 6. So that'll get multiplied by x to the 4th, by positive 8x, and by negative 3. So I'll have negative 6x to the 4th. Then I think, okay, so if I multiply the negative 6 by the positive 8x term, a negative times a positive is a negative. 6 times 8 is 48. And then I simply stick my x on there. And lastly, negative 6 times negative 3, that gives me positive 18. Remember, two negatives make a positive. And again, I have to combine my like terms. So I see an x to the 4th term and an x to the 4th term. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. X to the 4th, so that'll take care of that and that. I then have a positive 10x minus 48x. Positive 10 minus 48 is going to give us negative 38x. That'll take care of that and that. And then I have my whole number, positive 18, just hanging out. There's nothing to combine it with, so we'll simply leave that as positive 18. Okay, let's do another example here, maybe one a little more complicated. Suppose we have x times 2x plus 3. We'll say minus 4x squared. Let's make it 3x to the 1st plus 4. Let's even throw one more in there, why not? So minus 6x squared times x squared plus x. Okay, so let me see if I can squeeze all that in there. I think I've got it all there. So the same idea, now I have to distribute my x to these first terms. So x, so you can think about x as being 1x. So 1 times 2 is 2. X to the 1st times x to the 1st, remember you add the exponents, you'll get x squared. Then I do the same thing. Positive 1 times positive 3 is positive 3. There's an x here. There's no x's there, so you'll just have an x to the 1st term. Now I move to my next term, so I'm multiplying negative 4x squared by everything. Well, this is positive 3, so a negative times a positive is a negative. 4 times 3 is 12. X squared times x to the 1st, remembering we add exponents, will give us x to the 3rd. Then I have to distribute this negative 4x squared to my positive 4 term. So a negative times a positive is a negative. 4 times 4 is 16. And then I simply have to stick my x squared on there. And last but not least, the same thing, I'm going to multiply my negative 6x squared by both of these terms. So you can think about the coefficients, the numbers out front of the x squared and the x as being a 1. So a negative 6 times a positive 1 is negative 6. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Then I'll have a negative 6 times a positive 1. Again, that gives me negative 6. And x squared times x to the 1st is going to give us simply x to the 3rd. And again, now we have to combine our like terms. And I usually do them in descending order, which means we look at the highest power first. So if you look at the power on the first term, there's a 2, then a 1, then a 3, then a 2, then a 4, then a 3. So I'm going to write this negative 6x to the 4th term first. So that'll take care of that part. And then I'll do my to the powers of 3. So then I see a negative 12x to the 3rd and a negative 16x to the 3rd. Well, again, we combine the numbers out front. So negative 12 minus 6 is going to give us negative 18x to the 3rd. So that'll now take care of this term and this term as well. Then I have negative 16x squared and a positive 2x squared. Negative 16 plus 2 is negative 14x squared. So that'll take care of the x squared terms. And then the only thing I'm left with is the positive 3x term. And I have now done my third example. I have added and subtracted and combined all the like terms, and this is kind of considered the simplified version of that polynomial. So a few basic examples here of adding and subtracting polynomials. If you want to see some other stuff about polynomials, feel free to visit my website. On the left hand side there's an algebra section. You can click on that, and I have a whole bunch of algebra videos. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to answer them as soon as I can.